Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Credit Chat. I'm Rod Griffin, Director of Consumer Education and Advocacy for Experian. I try to be here every Tuesday and Thursday, 1:30 Central, 2:30 Eastern, to answer your questions about credit reporting and credit scoring and fraud and identity theft, all of the things that can help you have a more successful and healthier financial life and better understand those tools and use them as tools and not see them as barriers. So feel free to ask any questions you have. Tooth Doc X, thanks for joining. Soft Belly Rub, thanks for being here. I have a puppy that loves that. Uber Greg's good to be here. I try to be here. I was out last week and traveling, so couldn't make it on Thursday. So try to be here when I can. Kingdom Child 123, thanks for joining. Again, it's about having a dialogue. It's about having a conversation and learning from each other and helping share information that will help you use your credit reports and scores and those tools. Use them as financial tools to help you achieve your financial goals and to take the mystery out of them. Because I've been with Experian 22 years, been working in the field for more than 2 decades, and I still learn things and things evolve and things change. We're seeing changes today probably more rapidly than we ever have in the past. Ms. 84, good to see you. Always happy to have you join us. God's Daughter 2, thanks for joining. But with Credit Reporting Day, we're seeing information being removed from reports. So things like public records that used to be there and had been there for decades are no longer part of the report. And credit reporting, we're seeing things being added by giving you the ability to do that, like Experian Boost with your cell phone payments and your utility payments, and adding positive information. So it's a really rapidly changing world, and I think a really powerful and positive changes that are giving people more control over the information in their credit reports and becoming much more visible through the internet and other sources and much more transparent, which I think is always a good thing. So feel free to ask any questions you have. Uber Grace, great to start. When a bankruptcy falls off, does the score go up? Now, when the bankruptcy public record remains on a credit report for 7 years if it's Chapter 13, for 10 years if it's Chapter 7, and when that falls off after that time period, when it comes off of the credit report, the next time a score is calculated, it will probably improve. And I say that because scores aren't sitting on the report kind of like an odometer on a car, for example, where the mileage just keeps changing. The scores don't just sit there and tick up or down. They are only calculated when your credit score is requested and a lender requests your score. Or even, for example, if you have a monitoring service, and like my one perk with Experian is I have the free Experian monitoring service and I get scores, but it only calculates a score when I go into that service and it calculates a new one for me. Each time I ask for my reporter to look at that score, they have to access a report, calculate a score. So it's not like when the bankruptcy falls off, your scores immediately go up. What would happen is the bankruptcy would come off, and if in a week or a month or 6 months or a year you apply for credit or other services, that credit report will be requested and the lender will say, I need to have a score calculated. That score would then reflect that change, if that makes sense. So, I often am asked by people, well, does my score go up and down all the time? And well, it does when the score is calculated. So you don't have a score until the report's requested. So just to be probably too clear on that point, but to stress that. But the answer is yes, your score will probably improve the next time it's calculated. HS 13500, thanks for joining. And so again, an accurate score getting the Experian app helps. No, not necessarily. The scores are still accurate. When you get the Experian app, will give you a free score, a FICO score, and you'll have access to that report. If you subscribe to premium services, so you pay a fee every month at the premium level, we'll give you you'll get multiple FICO scores. So FICO scores for auto lending, for mortgage lending, you'll get the FICO version, various versions, so 8 to FICO 2, the bank card scores, and so on. So different scores for different kinds of lending. So you would see bank card scores for bank card lending. You might see auto scores that are used for auto lending, those sorts of things. So you get, 7 or 8 different scores, maybe more, from FICO when you subscribe. But otherwise, you get the FICO 8 score, which is the most commonly used score in the lending marketplace today. So it gives you a really good sense of where you would stand. It's a real score, legitimate score, so it's a FICO 8 score, so one you would get if you don't subscribe to the monitoring services, or subscribe to the app. So perfectly good score. It doesn't mean you get a more accurate score. It just means you get, each time you get your report, you get a current score when you have a new score calculated. Watchman, 1976, thanks for joining. If your credit is lowered on a revolving card, can I get a free credit report? Soft belly rub. If there's adverse action taken because of information in your credit report, you are entitled to a free report from the credit reporting company that provided the report the lender used. That's a lot of words, kind of confusing. So what that means is if a lender comes to Experian, looks at that report, and if you've applied for credit and your application is declined, or you don't get the best rates, or in the case of the situation you're mentioning, if you have an existing card, they lower your credit limit because of something in the report they got from Experian, you can get a free copy of your Experian report. They have to tell you how to do that in what we call an adverse action notice. So they would send a letter or communication that explains how to request that report. So you wouldn't be able to get the report from the other bureaus. It's only the report that the lender used. So if they used a report from Equifax or TransUnion, you would get a free report from that particular credit bureau in that instance. So it's the report they use to make the decision. So they have to give you notice. You have to explain how to get it. And yes is the answer. You can get a free report. FH Hillip, F. Hillip 2020, thanks for joining. God's Daughter 2, thanks for joining. Annualcreditreport.com is a good source. That's where you get your free report. And you go to www.annualcreditreport.com. That's the free annual credit report site. You do not get a score with that report. You can purchase one. Each of the bureaus, when you get that report, they'll offer you the opportunity to buy a score. It's usually about $15. And you would get either a FICO score or Vantage score. So you can purchase that score, and you'd get what we call a score report. So a report that gives you the score and explains that score and provides the factors, all of that information as well, in addition to the credit report. You can get free scores from a number of sources as well. And you can get a free FICO 8 score if you enroll in Experian Boost. We'll give you a free score. So, and when you start, and a free score when you finish, if you want to add your positive cell phone payments, positive utility payments, but that's your choice. The different ways to get free reports and scores. I'll get the number wrong. I think it's for I'll have to look up the price, but usually about $20 a month, somewhere in that range for most of the monitoring services. I think that's the case for Experian. Wayne and Dronda, is 814 good? Yes, it's very good. In the vast majority of scores. So if you're seeing a score that's a typical score today, which usually has a range of 300 to about 850 or 350 to 850, anything above 750 is typically considered very good. If your scores are above 800, you have very good scores. Nothing to worry about there. That's excellent. Anything above 800 is actually great in the scoring world. So anything above 750 is really good. You'll probably qualify for the best rate. So if you're above 800, you can probably walk into a lender and, based on your credit history, get whatever loan you ask for, so long as you meet their ability to repay requirements. This is not outrageous, of course. So, but that kind of score will typically qualify you for the best terms or rates when you apply. So you're in really good shape. And I always tell people, I don't worry about having a perfect score. I look at my scores periodically just so I know where they are, because people ask, I can share. My scores just dropped. So they're at 817 is my FICO 8 score right now. And it's come down. It'll go back up. They've done some things for the holidays. Utilization rate's gone up a little bit. Some things have happened. So it'll go. Uber Gregs, thanks for joining. Same to you. Happy holidays. Hope to talk to you again soon. Thanks for joining. Wayne and Dronda. Yes, I can buy just about anything I want. And the reason you can is because you don't just buy anything you want, right? So when you have good scores, it's because you manage your credit well, you make good borrowing decisions, you repay the debts as agreed, and we plan how to use credit. Just because we want it, we don't buy it. We make sure we understand needs and wants. We use credit as a financial tool, and that's what we all want everybody to do. When you have credit, you use it well. It's a financial tool that can help you become more financially successful. It's the debt that's the financial problem. We want to make sure people understand that. Use credit well, avoid debt. You'll make sure that you can pay those debts. Sometimes having a debt is an investment. So like buying a house, most of us can't pay cash. If you have good credit, you can get better rates and better terms, and you can buy a house using credit. You pay that mortgage, that debt over time, but pay lower rates, and it can save you tens of thousands of dollars if you have good credit. So, use credit well. Take on debt when you need to, but understand the difference between wants and needs. And it's hard because there are some things I really want so much they feel like a need sometimes, and they're not. And you have to resist that temptation. That's the real hard part. Bomble 17, thanks for joining. B Walker 196, thanks for being here and thanks for joining. If I miss your question, hang in there. I'll try to get back to it. And if I still miss it, repost. I'll try to get there. Why is child support reported to the credit bureaus? Child support is not a credit transaction. The credit maven. So defaulted child support may be reported by the government agency, typically a state agency responsible for child support payments. It's a matter of law that allows them to do that, and it's because it is essentially a debt you owe to that state agency that's then paid to the other spouse. And so you have kids, you're responsible for paying for them. They then can enforce that. One of the things that they can do to enforce that is report delinquent child support payments. So matter of law, and depending on your perspective, and in my perspective, personally, outside that of Experian, but you have an obligation to pay that child support. They are, we believe, your children. I would presume your children, and you have a responsibility through the courts and the decisions of the law to take care of them and to provide that child support. So it's a tool they have that they can use, and essentially it's a debt you owe through that agency. So that's the logic there. Child support should not be reported because credit was not given. It's state law, federal law, and they're allowed to report it. And I have family members who are paying out, and we could debate whether some of the child support requirements are a bit outrageous or fair, but they have the authority to report it to us. Yeah, so that's the case. Wayne Andronda, and sometimes it's easier to say, exactly. It's not just pay. That's not exactly what we're saying. But it's they're right. So, and they have legal authority to do so. Dalfredo 2743, thanks for joining and being part of the chat. And the past dues a debt. That's why it's reported. So Ms. DD4, yeah, and essentially that's the way it's treated. It's a past due debt that you owe to that agency. And it's an agreement you have. So Ms. DD4, thanks for that. And it does help clarify. It's essentially what we're looking at. Welcome, Nihilus King. Thanks for joining, for being part of Periscope. Hope to have you join the conversation. If you're just jumping in, I'm Rod Griffin. I'm Director of Consumer Education and Advocacy for Experian. This is Credit Chat. I try to be here Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1:30 Central, 2:30 Eastern, to answer your questions about credit reports and credit scores and fraud and ID theft, all of those sorts of things, and help you have a better understanding so you can use those items, those credit reports and scores, as financial tools, not have them be financial barriers. We don't want that to happen. We want to make sure that you can use that credit report, walk into a lender, know exactly what to expect, get the credit you need and deserve when you need it, be able to qualify for apartment leases, make sure you get that job that you're applying for, if it's and because they can look at your credit report. Employers never get credit scores, by the way. I always stress that. So really important. The Credit Maven, and Greg Faulkner, thanks. 16, thanks for joining. Tom Ballard, 9, thanks for being here and for joining. And how do we help victims of identity theft? So, number of ways. We at Experian, if there's a breach of other organizations, we provide monitoring services, typically at no cost to the consumer as a result of those breach agreements. So we provide unlimited access to your reports and scores. You can sign up for those things through those breaches. That's unfortunately more common every year, which is kind of sad with the number of breaches. But from a credit reporting standpoint, we do a number of things. One, if you believe you may be a victim of fraud, let me back up. So to some things you may not see. So if someone has stolen identities because your credit report can't stop them from stealing your identity. It doesn't stop identity theft. That identity theft happens when there's a breach, when someone, for example, they're methamphetamine addicts that are able to, they may go through trash, and because of one of the odd side effects or odd effects of that addiction, they may have extreme focus and they will tape together shredded documents to steal identities. Credit reporting can't stop that, and that came from actually a sheriff's department in Washington State. I had a huge rash, a huge problem with that. Doesn't stop someone from stealing a computer, doesn't stop someone from taking information out of your car. In the holidays, that's a big problem. So it doesn't stop identity theft. What will happen is with your credit report, if a person tries to use your stolen identity and they go to a lender and apply for credit without you having to do anything, if there's information that doesn't match properly, a social security number that hasn't been issued, if there is a date of birth that would belong to a minor, if there are other indicators of potential fraud, we will alert the lender and say, hey, there's a high potential risk of fraud here, so maybe you should stop the transaction without you having to do anything. And we have something called the National Fraud Database that does connects known fraud instances. So if there's a match, we would tell the lender, hey, this matches a known fraud case. You're probably working with the victim if the information matches, or you may be working with an identity thief. So you need to take appropriate action so we can help them identify those cases and help stop that fraud. So that's on just the front end when you apply, to try to make sure that identifying information, credit information matches appropriately, and we can stop a transaction or help the lender really stop the transaction before fraud occurs, without you having to do anything. Some other services, you can freeze your credit file at no cost. I always caution people, credit freeze does not prevent identity theft. I actually heard a very intelligent, very well-versed consumer advocate who should know better say that last week, that freezing your credit file will prevent identity theft. It does not and cannot. As I said, they steal your identity. Identity theft happens. Credit fraud is a symptom of that identity theft. If you freeze your credit file, we'll issue you a PIN number. It's free to do. If someone uses your identity in an attempt to apply for new credit, and it has to be a new credit application, it would trigger the freeze. The lender would then say, hey, the credit file's frozen. You would need to lift the freeze before you apply for credit. So it's a very narrow service, but it's available. So I want people to know about that. How more effective today, if you believe you may be a victim of identity theft, you received a breach notice, you know that you've lost your wallet or had something stolen, you can add a free initial security alert to your credit report that says, I may be a victim of identity theft. Before granting credit my name, please verify my identity or call me. Every single person who accesses that report, or entity, business that accesses your report, will be notified of that situation, will get that notice, and they have to respond to it. It's a matter of federal law. If you are a victim, you can file a police report and add what we call an extended victim statement. It lasts 7 years. It says, I am a victim of identity theft. Before granting credit in my name, please call me. And again, lenders are obligated to do that under federal law, to verify your identity and take appropriate action. And it would stay on the report for 7 years, or until you tell us to take it off. The benefit to alerts is that they will slow the transaction while they verify your identity, but they won't stop a transaction if it's you. So with a freeze, you have to lift that freeze with a PIN. Again, and it's in typically a limited situation. With an alert, covers everything. I think they're probably a better solution today, ironically, than a freeze for most people. Not necessarily everyone, but for most people. Freezes are, again, those two tools are available to be aware of those things. Several things that we do. If you are a victim, we will help you dispute information at no cost. There's never any cost to dispute fraudulent information or any other information you believe is inaccurate in your credit report. So you can go to Experian.com/dispute if it's not a fraud issue. If it's fraud, go to Experian.com/fraud. You can add those alerts at no cost. You can dispute information. We provide additional free credit reports. So you get a free report when you add the initial alert. You get another free report when you add the extended alert. You actually get multiple free reports after adding the extended alert to monitor your progress. Some states like California, you'll get 12 additional reports, one a month, to monitor that process. We help those transactions. When you file that police report and add that extended fraud alert, we can begin to proactively suppress or remove those fraudulent accounts, the accounts you're reporting as fraudulent, to help restore that history. So we do a lot of things that people don't think about. We have trained fraud representatives to help do that. Our goal is to stop fraud resulting from identity theft before you have to do any of those things. So a lot of things we do to try to help people and protect people from fraud resulting from identity theft. How can creditors still report on a charge-off? They really can't. So if you have a creditor who charges off an account as a loss, that original creditor is no longer going to report or update that account. They may sell that account or that debt or transfer it to a collection agency. That collection agency then becomes the legal owner of the debt, and that collector will report a collection account on the credit report, and that becomes the active debt. So you would see, and always remember that your credit report's a credit history, so it shows the history of that debt from the beginning to its end. So that original account would show the payment history to the point where it's charged off. We would have a status of charged off, which is considered a final status for that entry, and it would typically show sold to or transferred to and the name of the collection agency. Then you can see the collection agency, and it would say sold, purchased from, or transferred from the collector and that debt. And then they become the legal owner of the debt. So that's what should happen. So you shouldn't pay the original creditor if it's charged off as a loss. Work with the collector. Young fly guy. It doesn't. So Jamie Real One. Not sure what's happening in that instance. Then. So don't know how to respond without more information specific to that issue. Any idea how it works in Scotland? Craig Lennox, 294. I'm in our North America division, so can only speak to essentially the United States. I have counterparts in the UK and Ireland, Scotland. They would have to speak to that. Credit reporting is different from nation to nation, and the laws and regulations that govern it and the way credit reporting is done differs from country to country. And that's why your credit reports don't get transferred from one nation to another. We don't transfer credit reports across national boundaries. So for that reason, because they're different. The way they identify individuals, the kinds of information they can include are different from country to country. So we don't share the reports across national boundaries. So I can't really speak to operations in Scotland and their regulations. I don't know enough about it to really speak to it. And it's similar, but not entirely the same. Why do people charge for credit repair? And the other question is, why do people pay for credit repair? And so there's a lot of discussion about that. There is illegitimate credit repair and probably illegal credit repair. And there's something called the Credit Repair Organizations Act that specifies what a credit repair firm must do before they can take a penny from you. And if someone comes to you and says, if you pay me X dollars now, I will take that accurate, even though it's negative, information off of your credit report, they're breaking the law, the federal law. So they can't do that. People are desperate. They want to find an easy solution so they can get the things they want right away, or to get out of debts that are a burden to them. And what they usually find is when they go to a credit repair organization like that, and they don't understand their rights under the law, they tend to be out more money without any positive impact. And that's what the Federal Trade Commission has said, that you can't pay someone to remove accurate negative information from your credit report. It's not legal, and it doesn't work. So it's people want to pay because it seems easier, and they get promised things that sound wonderful, and it turns out it doesn't work for them. There are great credit counseling services who will work with a person to help them budget more effectively, help them identify ways to pay off debts, who can work with their lenders to help with what we call debt management plans, and at times it may involve debt settlement and negotiation, but they are typically nonprofit. National Foundation for Credit Counseling Great organization to go to learn more about them. When you see a sign stapled to a post, which is common in my area, that says call for credit repair, and don't call that number because they're going to take your money and not do anything that you can't do for yourself for free. And that's, again, that's what the Federal Trade Commission has said, not just me. And I've seen them charge as much as $1,000. At one point, I saw $1,200 per account. All they're doing is sending letters and to dispute information, to dispute those accounts. You can do that at no cost. It's free to do that. Go to Experian.com/dispute, or you can send us a letter too. And there's no fee to do that. And so their game is that they will send hundreds and hundreds of letters hoping that we won't get one sent, or a lender won't reply within the 30-day time frame, and so that account will be deleted from the report. The problem is the law changed in the late 1990s, early 2000s. It says if that happens, the lender can come back to us and say, hey, we responded, we missed a date, but that's accurate, should be reported, and we need it to return to the credit report, and we'll return it to the credit report. The law says we can do that. We just have to send a notice to you as the consumer saying it's back, and so that it's being restored. So those schemes typically don't work for the consumer, and they tend to extract a lot of money that would be better used to pay down the debts you already owe. That's my experience. So I know it's a pyramid scheme. It's just people will pay for things that sound too good to be true. And with debts and with money, we want things we want, especially this time of year, the things we would love to get for family and friends and things we'd like to do. So they are looking for a quick fix, and there just isn't one. So it's really hard. Student loans got deleted off your report. Do I still pay? My eye itches. So here's the question. If you still owe, is there a moral obligation that you repay the debt you owe? That's kind of your decision. If it's removed from the credit report, it's not going to affect credit scores. It's not going to affect lending decisions. It's not going to be part of that credit history. If there's no collection account remaining, we're not going to show it on the report. So that's your decision to make as to whether or not you should pay a debt you owe. I'll leave that to you. Riley TG35, thanks for joining. H. Princey, thanks for being here. If you have a question, feel free to ask. I'll do my very best to answer. If you're just joining, I'm Rod Griffin, Director of Consumer Education and Advocacy for Experian. This is Credit Chat. I try to be here for about 30 minutes. Usually I run a little long because I enjoy having the conversation, the dialogue, and sharing information with each other. So it's all about helping you better understand credit reports and scores, how things work, and how you can be engaged in that process and use them as a financial tool. So feel free to ask. I'll do my best, little buddy. Thanks for joining. If I missed a question, I apologize. I try to scroll back and catch them. If I missed them, feel free to repost. I'll do my best to answer. Red Tape Cron, thanks for joining. If the business has been closed for at least 10 years, can you still owe? Greg Faulkner, 16. It would depend on what happens with the debt. Have they sold it to or transferred it to a new bank or a new business? And is that now open and the business you should work with? You need to check with the creditor and with the contract, those sorts of things in that regard. And you would be able to maybe see that on your credit report. You would see the debt and who it was transferred to and who owns it. So that may be helpful if it's still an open, active account, and it would depend on those sorts of things. If the business closed but you're still paying the debt and it goes to a bank, for example, there are retail stores that may close, but they have credit cards with their brand, but they're actually owned by the bank. You may still owe those debts because the bank is still open, active, and it's still a debt you owe. So check your credit report, see if it's still there and active. Check the contracts, and that's the best advice I can give there, and see what it says. It would depend on a number of things, I think. And if they've written off those debts and closed, and gone bankrupt, paid off creditors, those sorts of things, you may not. It would depend on those situations and circumstances. Can credit scores be switched with another person with their consent? Little buddy, no. You can't really change scores. Scores simply reflect the information in a person's credit report, and your credit history belongs to you. Everybody has, if you have an open active credit account or you have credit accounts in the past, you will have your own credit report and you can't transfer that to another person. So if you have joint accounts with someone, that account would appear on both your report and that other person's, but you can't transfer that account, say, this is your history now. But they would share the payment history for a joint account. If you're an authorized user, you have permission to use a person's account. That would appear in your report. The other person's responsible for the debt. If they fall behind, the benefit of being an authorized user is we'll remove that authorized user account from your credit report because you are not responsible for repayment of the debt. So that's sort of an exception. But if you're a joint holder, a primary account holder, an individual account holder, all those things, so can't transfer it from one person to the other like in whole. Now, to help that person, there are things you can do. So you can add that person as an authorized user to one of your accounts, and they would not be responsible for the debt, but the account would then appear with what we call the account association of authorized user on the report, meaning they have your permission to make purchases, but don't have to pay the debt. So as long as you're paying that debt on time, it's going to positively affect their credit history. You can add them as a joint account holder, meaning they share full responsibility for a debt or an account and using it and repaying it. You can co-sign for a loan for them, for a car loan or maybe a smaller loan, a piece of furniture, something like that, and help them build their credit history as a co-signer. As a co-signer, you are still responsible for paying that debt, so it would appear on both reports. It would show you as the co-signer. So there are ways you can help a person build their credit history, but you can't transfer your history to theirs or vice versa. Really interesting question, though. DGI Brilseku, thanks for joining. I probably messed that up. Luis L. Fernandez, thanks for joining and being part of the chat today. Always enjoy talking with everybody. It goes really fast, and it did again today. So thank you all for being part of the Credit Chat. I'll try to be here again Thursday, 1:30 Central, 2:30 Eastern. I hope you'll join us tomorrow on Twitter for our Credit Chat. I'm trying to look over the top of my phone to see what our topic is. So we're going to talk about reviewing your year in credit. What could you have done better? So that should be a really interesting conversation. You can learn more about our credit chats at ex.pn/credit chat. So again, I'm here 1:30 Central, 2:30 Eastern on Tuesdays and Thursdays. On Wednesdays, we have a Twitter chat. We have lots of great experts who join us on and talk about all sorts of personal finance issues. Hope you can join us there. Again, visit ex.pn/credit chat to learn more. If you haven't checked out Experian Boost and you're trying to improve your scores, please do so. Go to Experian.com/boost. You can decide if you want to have your positive cell phone payments, utility payments, things like natural gas, water, electricity added to your report. Give you a free FICO 8 score as you go through that process, and one at the end to see if your score's been boosted. And you can tell us, hey, I want to, in the future, if you change your mind, stop, so you have full control. But it's a way for you to control the positive information coming into your report. We've seen some great results. So that's my plug for today. I'm hearing great things from people about it. So and I think it's a great way to help improve your scores if you're building your history or trying to restore your history over time. Excuse me, trying to lose my voice too. So thank you all for joining. Hope you're all staying warm. It got cold in Texas again, which it seems to do from time to time. So hope you all have a wonderful holiday season if we're not able to talk again. Take care, everyone, and we'll talk again very soon.